Okay, we're on back-to-back nicest days of spring. It's got me running late today and also feeling like we should talk about what you could be doing at your own gardens or what gardeners around the world in the north temperate climate are doing. Um, Pardon my hair. I heard on the radio today that no one's getting haircuts because of the social distancing, so I'm off the hook on that. Not that it was ever all that great, but apparently there's no one out there to cast judgment anymore. So I hope your hair is looking adequate for what you're doing. I think mine is too. Start with a quote just to remind ourselves, what's actually going on beneath beneath appearances, I guess. Here's a science writer, Neil deGrasse Tyson, saying that we can recognize that the very molecules that make up our body, the atoms that construct the molecules, are traceable to the crucibles that were once the centers of high-mass stars that exploded their chemically rich guts into the galaxy, enriching pristine gas clouds with the chemistry of life. That's a tough sentence, but we'll get back to it. So that we are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. That's kind of cool. That makes me smile, and I actually feel quite large at the end of that. It's not that we are better than the universe. We are part of it. We are in the universe, and the universe is in us. So this is not like a mystical statement. This comes down to the simple fact that our bodies are composed of molecules and atoms that were made during supernova explosions, which are stars collapsing on themselves and blowing up. And that's the only place. He calls them crucibles. Here's the word crucibles. Crucibles are like really thick pots that you could melt metals in. And here he's using it as a metaphor for these supernova explosions that made all the higher atoms in our chemical tables. So like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, those were all built in the explosions of stars. And of course our bodies use a lot of that kind of stuff. We use a lot of calcium and nitrogen and all these bigger atoms, heavier atoms than hydrogen and helium, which are everywhere, hydrogen and helium. But the heavier atoms are in very few places. Okay, I wish we could talk about this more, but we'll just keep going. My favorite way of gardening outside and getting ready in the spring is no-till gardening or mulching. On the farm, I do a lot of tillage and big machine work and rototilling. But in gardens, the best and easiest way to do stuff is by mulching the ground and then no-tilling different crops into them. Today we'll talk about nutrient-bearing organic mulches, and these are mulches that eventually break down, like leaves and straw and hay. Non-nutritive mulches, which are like plastics, ground cover, stone. You can use crushed stone as a mulch. And then we'll talk about container gardens, which are a kind of no-till garden because you don't really till what's in the container. You just plant it and do your best with what's there. Here's a look. Excuse me. This is kind of an early spring look after a garden spot or a place from last season has been spread with straw and looks like a little bit of manure. It can just look kind of like a mess. It doesn't look like a well-tilled garden, but this can be a very productive space, and there's enough straw here to suppress the growth of like grass and other weeds. So this is cleared out and this is kind of ready to go. This is an ideal garden space. Here's a little sprinkler to wet it down. Here's two more examples of no-till gardens. This is a kind of a lasagna bed method where different strata or layers of organic waste have been put down to create this raised bed. And over time, these layers will break down and make fertility for the cabbage and onions in this picture, but many crops grow well in this situation here. this is built over like the lawn. So say this was just lawn grass here, and you see this corresponding to the grass. Here we put cardboard down first, straw, leaves, manure for food waste, and layered several of those on there. And the thinness of the layer helps worms and other insects and soil organisms to mix up the food and the wastes and create soil from them. This is an example of non-nutritive mulch. The plastic mulch is very common on farms. It's easy to put down, doesn't weigh much. It does some cool things. It keeps water in, so it prevents the soil from evaporating a lot of moisture off. And it protects the crop from soil splash, which sometimes can make it sandy or less marketable. But it's very problematic because it can't be recycled because it's too dirty at the end of the season, and it's just kind of cheap and nasty in a way. So it has some benefits and some drawbacks. We use stuff like this at the FIC. We use more like a woven geotextile fabric material that will burn holes in and then put tomatoes on, and that can be reused year and year again. This material is more like the consistency of a trash bag, so you can't use it very many times in a row. Another replacement for tillage, because of course when we till, we're trying to kill weeds and encourage some aeration of the soil. We could do some of that by putting down clear plastic on the ground and covering the edges. And this creates like a little mini greenhouse in the soil, which will raise the soil temperature enough to kill weeds, even weed seeds, grasses. And then if this is left in the ground on enough hot, sunny days, the temperature of that soil will have been raised enough to effectively eliminate weeds and weed seeds. Then you can pull the plastic back and plant it, or you'd be able to use less mulch on that ground because you've already killed a lot of the weeds, so you wouldn't have to have such a thick mulch on it. Here are some cool container garden ideas. We've done some of this at FIC. You could do it at your place too. Pallets are good because they kind of they're like little paths in little garden beds, miniaturized. So you could put smaller plants. Here's where we have lettuces, some melons, onions. You could take the pallets. If you put fabric or material on the back of them, you could stack them up in these little pyramids to take advantage of up space in your garden. Some crops like to grow in this situation. Some wouldn't grow as well. And here, this gardener integrated some drip system, like your irrigation hose, into the pallet design. So it's pretty clever. Pallets can be gotten pretty cheaply, and it's a cool way to organize a small garden space if you had very little of it. Here we see some trellis techniques. So once you have the garden planted, you can start thinking about where crops are going to grow. And these are some ideas for pole beans and cucumbers and melons. People buy bamboo and make these teepees, or you can get dimension lumber like this and make nice trellises. But I prefer this on the right, where you use branches and sticks from trees. Check it out. One of the old technologies. I'm gonna check the time. For getting material to weave baskets or to make fences like this is called coppicing. So you could take a tree that's growing and cut the top off of it and leave some stump behind, and then in the next year it'll regrow lots of small, thin, kind of weak but very straight shoots off of it. We call these shoots coppice shoots. That's the word coppice, C-O-P-P-I-C-E. And from those shoots you can make baskets, you can weave baskets. This is a woven fence. Lots of things can happen, but I think they're really good for using in the gardens as trellis stakes or just tomato stakes, and they'd be essentially free. Some species that coppice really well in our climate are mulberry, box elder, locust, and willow. Um, the famous basket willow is a coppice species. I think I have, no, I don't have a picture of that. And yeah, and then you don't have much into it, so those can just be allowed to rot in the garden later, or use them for a couple of years and then just throw them away, throw them in the compost. Or you could use them a couple of years and lay them when they're not strong enough to be a trellis anymore. You could lay them into this Hugelkultur system. Hugelkultur, as you might imagine, originated in northern Europe, maybe Germany, Denmark kind of places. It's a system of using woody debris in large, coarse woody debris to seed the center of a bed, um, adding layers of the grass that you tear up or some other material, and then capping it off with compost or soil, and having these nice raised beds that slowly rot the woody debris that's in the middle, and use it as a moisture and oxygen reserve. Crops grow really well in this system. It's a nice way to get rid of um, branches and leaves and stumps and stuff without burning them or sending them off your farm. A lot of people end up burning piles of branches just because they don't want to see them anymore, you know. And the best thing to do is to slowly let it rot in the soil, but this is kind of a compromise there. So you don't see the ugly, messy pile of sticks. I don't find them terribly ugly or messy, but they can be in the way. And they get incorporated into these pretty flower beds or food production beds, and slowly release their usefulness into your life again. So you get rid of them, you don't see them anymore, and then they can become valuable assets to the garden. Yeah, so I wish I could talk to you more. The Zoom thing didn't work out. A number of you said you couldn't do it or didn't want to. In the coming weeks, so we have a full week next week, and then the following week is like exam week. For your information, I do intend to issue the exam at the end of next week, so you have all of the following week to work on it. It's going to be pretty simple. I think we'll take the last week to do Zoom meetings one-on-one, so I can get with each one of you at least one more time before class is over to confirm that you have the assignments done. I don't know if you've gathered it, but it's going to be pretty mellow on the grading side of things. We've gotten some casual word from higher ups in the school that this has been stressful enough to really hold your feet to the fire on grades. So as long as you put in the time, stick with these quizzes, do decent on the take-home exam, and hand in something for your assignments, you guys will all do well, and I appreciate you sticking with this. If you're in the summer classes, I know they haven't canceled my summer crops class yet, but we do plan on, or at least advising them to cancel it if it's going to be too many weeks as a online course. Not that this isn't an impossible way to do things, but it's really not the best way to do a practical. And you'd be better served to have some more experience on the farm. So for the few of you that were going to be in my summer class, yeah, that's a bummer, but hopefully we could do it in the fall. And if you have to do it in the summer, which is a good time to do it, we'll see you next year, okay? I hope all you all are well. Make sure you do the little quiz at the end. And thank you for your time. Bye. Good day.